Our philosophy has never been to over-explain anything. We trust the player and their ability to put the pieces together.
Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Play. I'm Jonathan, and today I'm going to be chatting with Jennifer Svedberg-Yen, who's the lead writer for the amazing RPG that has taken the world by storm this year, Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. Hello, Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, Jonathan. It's lovely to speak with you as well.
Yeah, how are you doing now? I guess it's been maybe 4 months since all the well-deserved outpouring of love and excitement for the game. I mean, kind of how are you sort of processing it, feeling about it right now?
It was quite surreal in the few months afterwards. I think I was just nothing felt real at that point. It's just like, is this real life? Now I think things have calmed down a bit. I live in the middle of Sweden, and so when I'm not actually online, it's just normal. And then I get surprised when I meet somebody who said, "Oh, I played the game," or like, "Oh, I love this ending and whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, real people are playing our game. This is great." So.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Still surprises me every time, but it's wonderful.
Nice. Yeah, I was at San Diego Comic-Con working this summer, and on the convention floor, it was just like a sea of red berets and striped shirts everywhere. It's pretty cool.
I love that so much. I saw a photo where a lot of the cosplayers had gathered together. It was just it was amazing. Yeah, love it.
Cool. So just a note for our audience, we're going to get into story spoilers for the game, just in case anyone hasn't finished it yet. Me personally, I actually finished a second playthrough of the game just last night. So everything's very, very fresh in my head. So I'm very excited to talk to you about it.
It's probably fresher than in mine since you
maybe
just played it.
So yeah, why don't we start kind of how you got brought on to the project? What kind of writing were you either doing before or during, when you sort of got introduced to this kind of new world? As I understand, this is your first video game foray, right?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
For most of the team, actually, it's our first video game foray. The team is actually quite young overall, and just a lot of just super talented people who came from a lot of different backgrounds. So that's one thing that I'm very thankful for this experience, to have been able to work with, just to collaborate and create with other just immensely talented creative people has been just a dream. For me, myself, it's a little bit, I always laugh when people ask me this question because my background is kind of random. This is my first writing foray as well as video game foray. Prior to this, I just wrote privately on my own, just short stories for myself, just in my own journals on random pieces of paper. Really getting involved with Sandfall was quite a happy chance encounter. This was during COVID. I was bored. I was online. I browsed a lot of Reddit. At that time, I saw a random post from Guillaume on the voice acting subreddit, record this for free, looking for free voice actors for a test demo that he was working on for a different game, actually. I am not a voice actor. That was my one and only time doing voice acting. We have real voice actors for the game, but I responded, and he kindly offered me 2 roles, actually. 2 characters. They're different characters, but we kept the names, Maelle and Lune. You might know them. But yeah, they were completely different characters. Then Maelle was a ghost girl, and so I did a lot of creepy, ooh type things. Yeah. And he sort of asked me if I wanted to help him write the story that he was working on. This is for a different game called We Lost, which is also super cool, which I'm hoping maybe we can revisit in some format at some point in time. Just started out initially just helping a little bit here and there, and then it became, do you want to join as writer? Then in December 2020, we sort of got some very encouraging advice from some advisors and investors who are saying, you can think bigger. What would you want? Don't constrain yourself. And so we're like, okay, well, if we didn't really have to worry about, minimizing the number of people you talk to so that for production purposes, you could, if we didn't have to think about that, what would we want? And that's when we came up with Expedition, part of which came from one of the short stories I was working on, actually.
Wow, that is amazing. I gotta get back on Reddit. Life
Yeah.
is passing me by there.
Although
Cool.
actually I'm not on Reddit anymore these days.
Okay. The types of like personal short stories you were writing, were they more in like the fantasy kind of genre?
Yeah, fantasy or like altered realities,
Ah,
things like
okay.
that, or dystopian like type things. Yeah, I love science fiction. I love fantasy, just speculative fiction in general. So yeah.
Nice, nice. And what would you say, like, was your relationship to like either the gaming industry or just video games in general, like around that time? Like, were you really into RPGs and like fantasy in the video game space?
So I have to admit, before this, I did not play any video games because I grew up in a very sort of strict Chinese household, and I'm the oldest. And at the time, also video games were very expensive, so I didn't have any exposure to that. I went to the library and I read books. That's what I grew up with. My brother, however, being the youngest, he did get his own video game consoles and got to play lots of games. Prior to Sandfall, actually, I only played tabletop. I played Dungeons and Dragons,
Oh, okay.
and I played lots of games like that. But after joining Sandfall, I was like, okay, I better start like looking into what this is. I got to do my homework. And my husband is a big gamer. And so we started playing. First, we started playing Borderlands, and then we started playing more things. And then now we have two TVs, two PlayStations. We sit side by side. I am a trophy hunter. I have platinumed Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok. I guess you could say I play quite a lot of games these days.
Yeah, it's funny because it's kind of surprising to me because I feel like I thought for sure there was like some heavy like old school Final Fantasy kind of inspiration.
Not directly, no.
Yeah,
But I co-wrote this with Guillaume, so maybe because he's a huge JRPG nerd, he knows everything. He's like a walking
yeah.
encyclopedia of JRPGs. I was primarily influenced by a lot of the classic science fiction fantasy novels that I love in terms of how they structure the world, how they do world building, how they do characters, and also a lot of science fiction fantasy TV series that I really
Mm.
love. That also had great, like, character portraits and great overarching themes that you can really dig into and that kind of stay with you.
So, what were some of those books like the that you really inspired you as far as the world building?
Oh, so many. So many. How much time do you have? Yeah, first off, from a world building perspective, Robert Jordan Wheel of Time series was something that I read over and over again growing up. Every time a new book came out, I would start over from the first book and reread it because that's how much I
Oh my
loved it.
God, there are a lot of books, right?
Yeah, there's 14 of them.
Okay.
Sadly, he wasn't able to finish it himself. He passed away before he could write the final endings. And Brandon Sanderson, another author that I love,
Yeah,
stepped in and finished the series for him. That is a monumental task. Brandon Sanderson did such an amazing job considering the huge
yeah.
expectations. So I really admire Robert Jordan's world building. It's so intricate, and he pulls from so many parts of real mythology lore, and he weaves them in such interesting ways, and he does it with so much thoughtfulness in terms of really thinking through, like, if this were to happen, then these are the logical outcomes. This is the kind of world, this is the kind of power structure, this is how the societies might evolve. I was just really fascinated by how intricate the world was that he built, and how many cool things there were, and how they all tied together so well, and just how visual his language can be, particularly in battles. You really feel like you're there. And then there are just some moments where he doesn't even use that much dialogue, short phrases, and yet like it can evoke such strong emotions. I still remember, like, there was like a pivotal scene, no spoilers, but let's just say there was like a very pivotal scene, a short phrase, and then I was just like, oh, like that really hit me in the feels, and I was just like, anyway, so sorry to nerd out on
No,
that.
no, no.
Uh,
Please go ahead.
Brandon Sanderson also, I love his work. I love particularly his magic systems and how thoughtful he is with those, and just kind of how he thinks about them, and how he really fleshes out how the system works, and then uses them in such innovative, interesting ways to drive the plot, to affect the characters. Beyond that, oh, so many authors. Yeah, I love, for instance, Naomi Novik with Deadly Education, that trilogy. RPG is such great dark academia. I love that. That would actually be perfect as a video game. I would
Mm.
love to play that as a video game.
It's so funny. She's one of our authors, Naomi Novik, and we've had her on this show a few times. And
Yeah,
I believe she used to be a video game developer earlier in her
really?
career. Yeah, and
That's so cool.
yeah, we talked a lot about that, like how like she loves that dark academia framing too, because it's kind of like built inside of like mission structure for like video
Yes,
games where you have like assignments and like you get rewards
yes.
and things like that.
As I was reading it, I was like, this would be so fun to play, and it'd be so brutal. And just the types of magic you could do, the types of attacks and the enemies, it'd be so interesting, and so many cool like levels to explore, worlds to explore. Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. Oh, Murderbot. I love Murderbot.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
dying to read that. I've heard like such good things about it.
yeah, it's
I'm purposefully avoiding the TV show because I want to read the book first.
yeah.
But
It is a little bit different. It's different from how I imagined it, but I think that's just natural. Like TV and book adaptations, there always will be some divergence there. But the book series, I absolutely love. Oh, actually, have you read the Cradle series? It's like lit
oh no,
RPG. Uh,
no.
by Will White. It's really cool. It lit RPG, really structured as a RPG, where you have a lot of like the skill trees and like the level buildups and like the power ups, and things get harder and harder, and has just like a really wonderful cast of characters. So easy to like just really get sucked into the combat. So I loved that, but also things like funny things like A Dirty Job by Christopher Moore. Quirky, fun, imaginative of like what happens if when the mundane meets the surreal, meets the fantastical. Loved that. Anything where it really like creates this very interesting world where it poses a question: what if the world was like this? And then it's just like a very detailed thought experiment of like how things might be. I love those types of books. Yeah.
Yeah, so do I. I really love. Oh my god, I think it's called Einstein's Dreams. It's very much
Oh,
like I think
let
they're
me
like
write
little
that down.
vignettes. Yeah, that
Uh-huh.
was a cool one. It's kind of like basically like really short little vignettes that are kind of like
Yeah.
based on like Einstein theories, but like how a world might work with like time working a specific way or light working a specific way. It's very
That
cool.
sounds super cool. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go check that out. Einstein's Dream. Thank you. Oh, I'm
Yeah, of course.
excited to
No,
read
thank
that.
you. You mentioned lit RPG. I did just finish the first Dungeon Crawler Carl book.
Oh yeah. People keep recommending it to me, and I'm really dying to read it. It's on my to read list.
He focuses a lot on like the inventory system,
Ah,
and like
yeah.
he makes like a lot of like jokes and interesting things with like how you can like pull in all these different like things that you're like finding in the environment. He also has this like
Yeah.
ex-girlfriend's cat who's like his companion, and she could talk. It's very funny.
Yeah.
It can be very violent, but there's also like a lot of
I
humanity
like
to it
that.
too, even
That's
though it's like a
great.
very kind of
You need the
outlandish kind of
contrast.
flex.
Yeah.
Yes.
That sounds
But
awesome.
yeah, so going back to Clair Obscur, once you got that kind of green light to make it bigger, yeah, I guess like what were some of the primary, I guess, aspects or themes of the story that you really wanted to establish, and where did those kind of ideas come from?
When we did the reboot and we started from scratch, there were essentially sort of like three main elements. One I mentioned already was from a short story that I'd been working on, and the premise, the hook. Uh, I believe like Guillaume was inspired by like a painting that he saw, and then it just sparked something. It wasn't even anything in the actual painting itself. Like the painting actually has nothing to do with any of the ideas, but like it sparked this image in his mind of the paintress and like a countdown, doomsday countdown. And then the question was like, well, who is she? Why is she doing this? And we were going around and around trying to figure it out, and like came up with a whole bunch of different possible scenarios. And couldn't really land on anything that we really clicked with. And that's when I realized, oh, actually, I'm working on this short story about a young woman who lost her mother at an early age. She's sort of a semi-orphan, who finds out that her mother can travel through paintings, and that her mother was actually not dead. She was actually lost in a painting, and she has to go into the painting to find her mother and bring her out and rescue her, and a bunch of other things, finding people to help her, etc. And I'm like, actually, maybe we could merge these two ideas together. And that's sort of where Expedition came from. And at the time, Guillaume asked his mom, actually. So his mom is also a key contributor. I think he asked her, what's the worst thing that could happen to you? And she said, well, losing one of her children, losing you. And so we're like, okay, that's the catalyst, and that's the catalyzing event for how we bring these two pieces together, was the death of a child. At the time, also, we were deep in the middle of COVID. And I was in Australia at the time. We were locked down. I was watching the world through my screen, and it's just seeing this never ending kind of cycle of death where we didn't understand what we were facing, and people were dying very suddenly in unexpected ways. And just in terms of just seeing how people cared for each other, how people reacted, the fear, the very presence of the unknown, because it wasn't even about death in a way. It was about the fact that we didn't know what we were up against. And that echoes a lot of what the Paintress kind of represents. So I tapped a lot into those feelings when I was thinking about how would people react in this situation. So I talked a bit before about how I admired all these other authors in terms of how they come up with almost like a thought experiment and then like see how it really flows out. That's really how I think about stories as well. Is we start with, this is the situation that we put the world in. How does society evolve from there? How do the people evolve? What will their mindset be? What kind of roles will people play? How do people think about mortality? What's their relationship with these ideas, with each other, with themselves? What do they expect when the lifespan of the average person keeps continuing to shrink? And how do you think about the generation before you and the generation after you? So just a lot of things that are present in our current life, in our real world, dropping them into this scenario. Like, how would it work? How would people react? That's pretty
Yeah.
much kind of some of the main
No,
things.
this is all the amazing information that I wanted. Thank you. Once you started getting into, I guess, more of the heavy lifting of like writing scenes, what kind of was like a typical day when you were working at that level? Were you like planning out all the different acts and scenes very specifically in advance and then going back and like writing dialogue, or was it putting the characters in like precarious situations and then kind of like writing your way out of it, I guess, for lack of a better word?
I would say it was very iterative. Like we went through the process several times, and we would oftentimes be doing things in parallel. So we might start writing a script for the vertical slice, like, which is sort of like a demo of to like a small slice of the entire game. Hence the name. So I always imagine it like a birthday cake, a slice of
Yeah.
birthday cake, where you can see all the different systems. Part of it was, writing for that. Sometimes we'd be writing for different levels, but at the same time, we were also thinking about, the backstory for all the characters, the lore of the world, what exactly happened. And so as we are writing one part, I'm also writing a lot of like the foundational documents. So I actually spent quite a lot of time thinking about what happened in Lumiere from the fracture to present day, and I actually came up with like a whole timeline of events. What was the political system like? How did people organize themselves? What were their priorities? There was a soft coup in there. There was a lot of different factions whose voices take precedence. And as you wind down towards the end and you just see like that nobody returns and things aren't happening, how does that change the priorities of this society? And then specifically, who are the people that are shaping this society? How do they relate to the characters? So for the characters, I also spent a lot of time diving a bit deeper into their backstories and just really thinking about what were the key events in their family history, in their individual history, that shaped who they are. For me, who they are, like what they've experienced, will affect how they think about things, how they see the world, their perspectives, and how they think about things in turn will tell you how they will act and how they will speak, specifically how they will react to each other. And so when writing scenes, it then becomes like sometimes quite easy if I can come up with the right entry point into the scene in terms of like how they start. Right. Then from that point on, it's just letting the characters react naturally to each other, to the situation. And sometimes, not for all, but for some scenes, the scene just writes itself because I just let the characters do what they want to do. Part of the iterative process is like really clarifying who the characters are, their voice, and then going back and then rewriting some scenes. And then as the level design changes as well, which did happen, which is a natural part of gameplay development, the script would also have to be rewritten, shifted to reflect the new thing. So it was definitely a very iterative process and very collaborative as well with Guillaume, who was the creative director, and we wrote the script together, as well as with Victor Delard, who is one of our quest designers, and who also was part of the writing team and wrote a lot of the very classic now gestural meme dialogues. I think he was brilliant with those. And
Nice.
so the three of us collaborated, and it would just be a very iterative process as we continue to polish through. So it took us, I think, over 3 years to write the script off and on, and then and then getting it into the final form.
Wow, amazing. What would you say was, at least for you, like the biggest challenge that you had during that 3 years when you were putting the story together?
I'd say it's because we had started off with plotting out what is the story, what are the main plot points, the main beats, like how does that tie to each level, what's going to happen. As the level design shifts, you have to kind of rearrange things. And there's also times when, we have to juggle the desire for certain plot points with what the characters organically want to do based on how we develop them up to this point. And so maybe the hardest parts creatively was when we want the characters to do something, but the characters don't want to do it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like
Yeah.
writing the characters, it's just they actually want to go this way, not this way. But we want them to go this way for XYZ, like level design reasons, plot reasons. And so then thinking back through, okay, how do we reconcile this? Do we need to maybe change the sequence? Do we need to change the flow of events? Do we maybe change the inciting incidents? Do we change their perspective slightly? So all of that needs to be kind of like tweaked and again iterated on. So it's a lot of iteration.
Yeah, one of the things I really, really loved, I think like the prologue of the game is so effective. You can sense that you did like a lot of like documentation and backstory on like the history of Lumiere. Like you mentioned, like at a certain point, is there like a schism in the philosophy of these people if they know that, they have a finite lifespan, but they also know that these expeditions are seemingly kind of futile. There is going to be like divides. And I love how it even like seeps into like how children are raised and how people look about their like personal professions and the relationships they have with people. It's just very, very tightly packaged, but also like very, very dense. I feel like just that prologue like would work perfectly just as like a short film or something.
Oh, thank you. That's really lovely to hear. Yeah. Sophie actually came out of developing the backstory for Gustave because originally she wasn't there. Originally, it was just the gommage and there was no Sophie. But as we were working on the backstory, and I was like, oh, and then I had kind of created the character of Sophie and, her relationship with Ciel and with Gustave. And I'm like, I feel like this would be a very compelling way to showcase the gommage. So Sophie, and which I think now she has become kind of the cornerstone of the prologue in a way. Like I feel like that is one of the defining aspects, and I think that speaks to the power of doing your homework to write the backstory.
Totally, yeah, totally.
Backstory, yeah.
I would say a lot of the fantasy kind of elements in the game and the details, which we can get into like later when you start to realize, what's the true nature of the world and the canvas. It felt like a lot of that was like not purposefully not like minutely described as far as like, oh yeah, well, how is someone able to like paint these worlds? Was that something that you were sort of conscious of? Were you deliberately trying to kind of leave certain aspects of the story or the world open to interpretation? And does that require like a certain amount of trust, I guess, in the player?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Great
Oh,
question.
thanks.
Yeah, we discussed actually early on what kind of magic system do we want? Do we want a soft magic system or a hard magic system, right? Do we want to really crisply define the rules and the limits of their power? Because one thing that is something to keep an eye on is power creep. If you don't properly define the extent of somebody's abilities, then do you start to get into deus ex machina type situations, or just like, oh, and then they can just solve this. And then you wonder, well, why didn't they just do this from the beginning? So we did have quite a lot of discussion around that. But I think in part because it's a game, and abilities and skills are part of gameplay. And we really wanted gameplay to be able to have full freedom on how that would work. And I think the gameplay team did a fantastic job. The game design team, led by Maelle, he's like amazing. Just in terms of how they designed the skills of the different characters, and also specifically the skills of Renoir and Aline, who are painters. I feel like they really took the theme and really like harnessed it in really cool ways. More broadly, beyond just the powers, the magic system, but the themes and the story details, we also did purposefully leave it a little bit more open to interpretation. Our philosophy has never been to over-explain anything. Like, we trust the player and their ability to put the pieces together. And we also know that that's part of the joy and the engagement that you get out of a game, the enjoyment you get from it is kind of seeing how all of these things piece together. So we have a lot of references scattered throughout that people can then piece together to kind of understand a little bit more about how the world works, about how the magic works. But I think those are pieces that people can then, play around with. There are certain things we wanted to be ambiguous. For instance, which ending is canon? A lot of people ask me that. Which one's the right ending? What's your favorite ending? What's the correct ending? And I tell everybody there is no correct ending. There is no canon ending. There's no official Sandfall ending. Both endings are there for a reason. We put them there for a reason. They were designed in a very particular way. Neither is perfect. Both of them are heartbreaking in their own ways. Both of them have parts that make you glad, the parts that you feel like, oh, okay, I want a happy ending for these characters. But both of them also have their own cost. And it is a reflection of reality. A lot of times some people's happiness does come with its cost. Like, things are very rarely perfect. And I think we were really trying to also show both sides of the story. One thing that Guillaume and I agreed on very early on was that we didn't want to tell a story that was just good versus evil, which I think is somewhat unique, actually, I think, in games, where the antagonist and the protagonist, they're all actually good people, and they actually really deeply care about each other. And at the heart of it, it's the fact that because they care, there's conflict. One of my pet peeves is when the conflict feels a bit contrived. It's just they didn't communicate, and if they had just talked to each other, like, problem solved. Yeah. Or if it's just like one person is uncontrollable evil because they just like being evil and evil is cool. Which, don't get me wrong, I enjoy those stories too. I have many of my favorite stories are like that too. But in this instance, we wanted it to be to focus on the fact that because both sides care, they have different perspectives on how best to move forward. They care about each other, and they care about each other's future, right? And so really, it's partially it's trying to balance, how do you respect somebody else's autonomy and their right to choose their own path with your desire to save them, to save them from harm. If you see them doing something that you think will be like terrible, like, at what point do you compromise their autonomy for their sake, which I think is very topical as well in reality. And particularly with things like COVID, you think about like,
Oh, yeah.
what's the duty that we owe to each other and to ourselves? How can we help each other stay safe? And it really comes down out to caring, actually. And so that was something I really wanted to explore, was the idea that people are fundamentally good in this world, that people fundamentally care, and yet conflict still arises. You still can see things in completely opposite ways. And part of what we wanted to do in the story is really be able to show both perspectives, so that at the end, you're not sure who's right. They both have a point. And that's the problem, is they both have a point. So now, like, it's not that one is wrong or one is right. And although I will also say, for some people, they told me the ending was very clear for them. They're like, well, obviously Versa's ending. Well, obviously Maelle's ending. Like, how is there even a question? You're a monster if you choose the other one, which is also a valid reaction. I think for us, it was very important that for the players, they go into this, and this is one of the beauties of this being an interactive medium. As they journey with the characters, they, through their own life experiences, their own perspectives, they engage with the story and the world that's around them. They interpret the facts as they are given and the relationships. And then the player can decide for themselves what is the right ending based upon their own perspective. And for some people, it'll be very clear. For other people, I've gotten messages from some fans who told me they like agonized for hours before they made, like they literally, somebody told me I had to walk away. I had to walk away. I spent 5 hours staring at the wall, thinking about what choice to make. And then I came back and I made my choice. And I was like, things like that. So I think all of that is wonderful because, again, it speaks to the fact that each of us has a different perspective. And when we engage with the same amount of facts, but we still have our own perspectives, we are going to feel very differently about things. And so I think that's one of the wonderful things about our player base is that there's such a variety of reactions and attachments to the endings.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely one of those players that agonized on the ending screen for a while. And it's funny, like I mentioned earlier, like even when I played the game a second time and I was like, all right, at the end, I'm obviously going to do like the other one. And I was still like torn. I was like, it just still doesn't feel right. But yeah, there's so many interesting things about the ending. Because one thing I like about it is that, you know, there's been games where there's like a binary choice at the end of the game. But a lot of times it's usually like the protagonist or the main character is the one like making a choice here or there. But in this situation, it's a little bit different. It's posed like Maelle's mind is made up, Verso's mind is made up. You're not going to change their perspectives at that point in the story. It's really just a question of like, who are you going to embody in that final fight or who you're going to support, which I thought was very, very cool. It felt more natural to like those characters as opposed to them having like just a dramatic change of heart at the last second.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way. I think that's also something that I really enjoyed about how we were able to do this because it's a game and you can actually, as a player, like choose which side you want to take. Really, really cool, I think. Yeah.
Nice.
Which
I
ending
definitely.
did you
Oh,
choose
sorry.
first time? Oh, sorry. Which ending?
I went with Verso.
Yeah. And then the second time,
I didn't feel great about it. Yes, I did watch the Maelle ending too. And yeah, I totally agree. There's mixed emotions with both of them, and I definitely also agree that they both feel like tragedies in their own way. But there's also like, you know, joy in both of them.
Absolutely. It's bittersweet because it's like you want it, but then you also regret wanting it.
Yeah. You also mentioned the idea of like not having black and white villains. And I totally agree. That's something that, particularly in like more fantasy kind of stories, that's something I really do crave because like you said, it's not super, super common. But one thing I think Clair Obscur does really well is you don't know that in the beginning, right? Because in the beginning, it does feel like it's kind of a black and white, at least it's presented that way, right?
Yes.
You have this paintress, this monolith, she's evil, we have to kill her, very clear, right?
Exactly.
And of course, you're subverting the expectations of that framing throughout the course of the story. And we can get into like those plot details too. Like, was that something specific that you wanted to do to kind of like play with those expectations? Yes. Nice.
Yes, we definitely wanted to suck people in with like, you know, like the classic David and Goliath, you know, it's classic, like, you know, it's like a hopeless mission against this like unstoppable force. And to me, the Paintress is like not even so much like overwhelming evil or anything, but just, you know, almost like a force of nature. You just have to overcome it, you know, somehow, like, and she might have malevolent intentions, and a lot of people do in Lumiere presume that, but others presume otherwise. But yeah, like we definitely wanted to initially set that up as this is how you understand the world. And then you realize what you understood is not actually reality. Because a lot of times we only see the world from our perspective. And then if you actually shift the frame, somewhere else, and then you realize, oh, actually, what we saw was only this corner of the world. And now there's actually all these other dimensions to this problem that we have.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about that moment. So I think it's at the end of Act 2, if I'm not mistaken, but that's where we kind of get like that big reveal that, like you said, the world is not what it seems. We learn all about the true nature of the canvas, the paintress, the Desange family. We even get a scene where you're playing as Maelle in the real world.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm very curious, like, how did you approach that moment? Like, were there a lot of discussion about, how you were actually going to go about unloading all that new information on the player that was going to like upend their whole perception of like the game reality?
Yeah, well, we had a lot of discussion around this about like, how much to reveal in the third act and how much to reveal before that. So we had played around with different ideas. We had like a whole table of like when certain reveals would happen. But then it just ended up feeling more satisfying in a way to hold off on most of it until Act 3 so that you really feel like one of the expeditioners. We thought a lot about how we wanted to show it. I think we always knew that everybody in Lumiere would die. That was early on. Like similarly to also the Gustave dying in Act 1. Also, like from the very beginning, like we had sort of already discussed, Guillaume and I had discussed, like, oh yeah, well, Gustave's gonna die, and then when they think they've won, everybody else dies. It's going to be fantastic. People are going to be like, what? So that we always knew. But we did kind of tweak a lot the how much information to show. So initially, it was actually just the scene between Maelle and Verso talking about things. One thing that neither of us really like wanted to do was an exposition dump, right? Like we didn't want to just like, throw a whole bunch of information. So we wanted it to be kind of, you pick it up through context clues, but we still make it like understandable. But I think we realized as we went through and did multiple playthroughs that perhaps people needed a little bit more to understand. And so we actually then added in the Clea sequence with Maelle and Clea to try to clarify some of that a little bit more. And I think we ended up with a really nice balance, I think, in terms of being able to convey information without, hopefully, I hope we did well on this, without overly dumping information on people.
Yeah, I think the decision to like make it playable, at least that part where you're in the mansion, is very effective because it's like you can reveal things a little bit at your own pace. Like I remember, like there's all these like nice little tidbits of information. Like you see, like I think you see like the Esquier stuffed animal, stuffed toy.
Yes.
Or yeah, you see the dogs. Yeah,
you see the dogs.
I really love the way that was handled. So since you mentioned my man Gustave, I was going to ask you about like whether or not his death and the way it happened and when it happened in the story, was that kind of something that you established early on?
So it started off as a joke. A lot of these things actually started off as a joke. For instance, the name Monoko and Noko started off as a joke. Noko is this energy drink. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's this energy drink that's very popular in Sweden and Europe. Guillaume and Tom, who is our CTO, they met in Sweden and they drank a lot of Noko. And so I was just sort of teasing them. I was just like, we were trying to come up with names for Monoko and Noko. And I was just like, all these names, I don't know. Like, we should just call them Noko and Monoko. And then it just kind of stuck. So yeah, there's quite a lot of jokes, that kind of stuff. Expedition 60 was obviously also started as a joke.
Oh, was that the nudists?
Yes. Nice. That was a joke between, I think, Alan, our character artist, our lead character artist, and Guillaume. So anyway, on Gustave, this was again on the previous game, the other game that we were working on, called We Lost. And I was working on a script Bible, a narrative Bible for the story, and we were talking about it. And Guillaume loves twists. I enjoy twists too, but he enjoys twists even more than me. And I was just joking and teasing him. I'm like, you like twists so much. You know what would be the ultimate twist? We should just kill the main character, like now in this scene, which was at the end of Act 1. And I thought he was going to be like, ha ha ha, yeah. Then he's like, oh no, actually, that's a great idea. We should do that. And so then I was just like, oh, but will people hate that? Will they be like angry? And so then I like started looking into, do other games kill their protagonist in the first act? And other people have done it. So and it is controversial, but it's not. It has been done. So then when we rebooted and thought about Expedition, and we were thinking about, we're still killing him, right? We're killing him, right? Yeah, we're definitely killing him. But then we also thought about, does this make sense? Does it make sense to kill him at this point? And from an emotional arc standpoint, it did actually feel like a proper arc for him. And because you'll notice, like, it's sort of bookended. I don't know if you've watched The Studio. We love a bookend. I personally do love a bookend. I love bookending. And so there's a bit of symmetry there. And you have Gustave at the beginning, his first initial interaction with Mira Renoir, and then his final interaction with Mira Renoir. And you can see the emotional growth from that first idealistic Gustave, who thought he believed in all the tenets of the expedition and was fully prepared, he thought, to do what needed to be done. When faced with the reality, realized how outmatched they were. And just then you see him at the end in that similar situation, but you can see that he has made peace with what needs to be done. And he has fully embraced, for those who come after. So you can actually see the arc over the course of Act One. So for him, his story was actually complete in terms of the story that the themes and the perspectives that Gustave embodies, in terms of the idealism and the, in a way, naivety of being like, I'm ready to die for my people. Ultimately, if it didn't work for the story, we wouldn't have done it, even because it was just a joke, But it was something that felt really right for the story. And it also catalyzed Maelle's transformation. So a lot of people are like, oh, like, this isn't really a hero's journey or anything. And I say, actually, if you look at it from Maelle's perspective, it is actually a hero's journey. She's setting out, and this was the catalyst that really changed things for her. Because prior to this, her relationship with the monolith, the paintress, was more just, she just wants to get out of Lumiere. She just wants to go and explore the world. She's accepted that this is how the world is. It's unfair. It sucks. She just wants to live her best life. Then Gustave dies. And now it's, things take on a different meaning for her. And then she interacts with Versa. You'll notice we have Gustave, who's the decoy MC main character. We have Verso, who's the nominal main character. And then we have Maelle, who's the hidden main character that you don't realize until Act 3 that she was actually the main character all along. So from her story perspective, like, what Gustave's death does is it then catalyzes her transformation and her journey. And so that's why for us, it made a lot of sense emotionally, plot-wise, and also just a nice twist as well. We knew people would hate us, though.
No, I think it's so smart, and it works on so many different levels. Like, and one element I think is interesting is like the meta nature of like the narrative, and how, like, you kind of mentioned, like, in storytelling and particularly in gaming, we feel such intense emotions when like a fictional character dies, especially when it happens very early in the story and we think it's the main character. And we don't need to name names, like, you guys know who you are out there. It's like you're getting this intense attachment to, at the end of the day, what is essentially just like this entity that is pixels and audio files.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course that ties into the dilemma at the end. It's like, does it make sense that we're getting so attached to these things that aren't technically real? And does it matter if the emotions that you're feeling feel real or are real? So I think it definitely works wonderfully on that level.
What is real? How do we define what's real? And if it's real to us, does it really matter if other people think it's real? And I have to shout out our amazing mocap actors and our amazing voice actors in both French and English for the amazing job that they did to really help people feel that emotional connection. I feel that I say this a few times, like, I feel like obliged to say this, that I appreciate all of the compliments about the story and the narrative, but the reality is it's so much more than just the writing department, the narrative department. Like, I have to say, like, it's also the acting, it's the cinematics team, it's the lighting team, it's the music, right? Like, in terms of really getting the emotion across, it's really so many different teams are involved in building that attachment to the characters, and people might not necessarily think of it, but to me, the UI, for instance, the menus, the combat, that's how a lot of the players are spending a lot of time relating to the characters through combat and through the menus and like getting to know them that way. And that should not be discounted either in terms of building that connection. So I have to shout out all of the team and all of the various team members that really helped players connect with the characters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. It's funny too because I think I saw like an interview with Charlie Cox and he was saying how I think he said he like only worked on the game for like a half a day or something crazy like
Two
that.
half days. I was
Okay,
there. It was two half
there you go.
I think
But
it
still,
just
like,
all blended together into one half day. But yeah,
but it got me
he
thinking.
was
Like,
incredible. Yeah.
it is amazing how, like you're saying, how everything kind of like works together. Where it's not just like the voice actors, not just the writing. It's just like the little mannerisms. It's how he's designed,
Yes.
and how it all just kind of
Character
like works
design.
together. It
Yeah.
really is like obviously like much greater than the sum of its parts. Is from like a writing perspective because I think heard that you said you wrote the initial script kind of like more like a Hollywood screenplay. Um,
Yes.
how much of like I guess the stage direction or like the character blocking is in the script when it comes to like that kind of stuff that's not just dialogue?
Oh, yeah, we wrote a lot. And I would say that I definitely deviated from standard script or screenplay format. I know some folks are sticklers for screenwriting format has to be a very particular way. We definitely deviated from that because at the end of the day, it is a game, it's not a film. And so part of that is also because it wasn't one person doing all of the performance. We have mocap and voice split, right? And then we have a lot of different teams who are actually doing, set dressing and whatnot. And we need to all stay coordinated. And we also need to figure out what's going on outside the cutscenes during gameplay. And so in the script, actually, we would actually write out not just the cutscenes, but also all the dialogue during gameplay moments, as well as like the NPC interactions and the camp dialogues and things like that. We would write out quite a lot of stage direction and also emotions. I'm a big user of parentheticals. I don't know how familiar you are with screenwriting. In this instance, I used quite a lot of parentheticals to express like what the specific emotion and the specific nuances in that moment. For one, because, and this is crazy to me, for voice acting, for a lot of studios, actually, they don't really do rehearsals. They don't give the actors the script beforehand. They show up and they just go. And then the directors only get like a few days beforehand to like review everything. And then they just have to go. And so it's not the same as in a film or TV series. And so we need to be able to convey a lot of information and help the actor get situated immediately. And so a lot of that is done with the cutscenes. We usually already have the cutscenes developed to a certain level so the voice actors can see it. But when there isn't a cutscene, also just having additional like notes on like what kind of emotional beat, because there are some lines you can say it 50 different ways, right? Like, and to try to make sure we nail like, okay, this is where they are in their emotional arc. This is the kind of reaction that they need. So we did write in quite a lot of that. But at the same time, we also let the actors have a bit of freedom to play around with some of those things. And so, for instance, during the cinematics mocap sessions, the action was more like a springboard, a jumping off point. And then they would then modify it during the mocap session according to what felt good, what felt right, with things like that. So it was a combination of both. I think we tend to try to prepare as much as we can, and then we let instinct and what feels good in the moment, what feels right, what feels like it clicks, take on. So I guess instinct meets preparation, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, since you obviously like wrote so much of the story, what was it like when you kind of first heard the words that you wrote?
When I knew that Andy Serkis and Charlie Cox were going to be in our game, I was just like, oh no, is the script good enough for them? Are they going to read this and be like, why am I performing this crap? So I did have that like, so So I guess in that sense, you could say that knowing who the actors were, like I was like, oh, this better be good enough for them. I hope this is a strong enough scene for them where they feel like there's actually something there for them to engage with, and that this isn't just a flat scene that they have to do. So in that sense, yeah, listening to the voice actors perform, particularly with the initial like cutscenes, the early cutscenes on the screen, was really surreal. I imagine these characters in my head, right? Like I've been living with them for years, right? And they are all different pieces of my heart, like, and for a lot of it, I draw very extensively on my own personal experiences and my own personal perspectives to try to put myself in their shoes, to try to make sure like I am truly representing them the way that they want to be represented. So they are very real to me in my head. And to actually see it on screen with the voice and see them come alive. And what's magical is all of the actors also bring a little bit of themselves and put that into the character as well, which just fleshes out the character in a completely different way. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful and it's crazy. And it was just sort of like, oh my gosh, they're real. They're here. They see this. And it's just, it was very mind blowing because again, I am listening to like these amazing voice actors say the words that we have written. It's very humbling and like very strange in a way. Just sort of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is real. um, and then I think also this was like the first litmus test, right? Like to see like, does the story work? Because
Mm.
I think it works, but do other people think it works? And to hear the voice directors who were so wonderful and lovely, and they said so many nice things, and I was like, oh, but you guys are working with us, so I feel like okay, you're gonna say nice things, right? Like, and the actors are gonna say nice things, but to see their reactions in the booth to the lines as they're doing it, and those weren't faked reactions, right? Like when they genuinely laughed at something that was coming up in the script. I think like Rich Keeble, who voiced Monoko, I think there are several like parts in Monoko's lines that he was just like laughing, like this is great. And then we're like, oh yeah, the humor works, right? Or when we did some of the very emotional scenes between Renoir and Maelle, and we're playing it back in the booth, and other people came in to kind of stood in the back, other people from the studio just to watch, and everybody in the room was emotional and had tears in their eyes. I was like looking around and I was just like, I felt emotional, everyone else is emotional, the actors are emotional. I'm like, oh, I think this works. It's great. It's like, this is real and this is actually landing as intended, which is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of like reminds me of back when I was studying film in school. I would do like auditions for my like little short films that I wrote, and I remember like as soon as like the actor would come in and start actually saying the lines, like I would just get so embarrassed, and I felt like I would have to like hide under the table because it was just like, this is this is weird, this is too much.
Yeah. You feel very vulnerable, right? Because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just sort of like, this is very personal and this is like your work, and you're just like, okay, like I hope you guys like this. I hope this is okay. I hope this there's something in here that you can connect with and feel that you can work with and react to.
Yeah, no, I think everything works so well. Like, I honestly, I think like for me, like the most intense scenes in the game are just like literally just two people just talking. Like, I really love the scene where it's like Lune and Gustave, they're kind of arguing about whether or not to sort of like abandon the mission and go after Maelle. That gets really,
Fuck the
really
mission.
intense. Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I love how they kind of joke about it later. It feels very
Yeah.
natural, like how people would actually behave. And then when like
Yeah.
Renoir and Maelle and Versa are kind of just like going at it, like super, super intense. So for people who really, really loved Clair Obscur, is there a book that you think kind of maybe captures some of its qualities that they might really, really enjoy?
I don't know if there's one book. I feel like there's different elements that people are drawn to. I think if people want something really sad to cry about, Flowers for Algernon, I think is
Oh,
a
yeah.
is a very like heartbreaking to me, and it also has a lot of these deep philosophical questions about things like identity, about how people interact with the world around them and what's real when things are transient in nature. For world building, I think Wheel of Time definitely for intricate mythology and lore and world building. I mean, nothing beats that. I feel like a lot of the ones that I mentioned before, like Naomi Novik's the Charlemagne's Deadly Education. I think that's a really fun. You're going on a mission. You're trying to save things, and there's very interesting. The plot is great, and the characters are great. Yeah.
Nice.
But,
No, yeah, thank you for that. So I know there have been some reports that you guys at Sandfall Interactive are looking at like future stories, either in like the Clair Obscur universe. Is there anything you can kind of let us know about either what's planned or maybe where are there certain pockets of this story or just this style of storytelling that you personally would love to see kind of explored?
I'm like, who told you that? No, I know Guillaume mentioned something about, like it's a franchise name. So, I'd say it's still early on in the process. I think when we were writing Expedition, right, I'll just say that the world that we created and the stories that we had in mind there's more than what we showed in the game. So there's a lot more in terms of behind some of the expeditions, for example, the previous expeditions, behind kind of what was happening in Lumiere, and behind like what's going on with Escape Francois, etc. So there's like as part of the foundational work for writing the story, there's a lot of surrounding story that is not explicitly in the game. That's stuff that we've that I find interesting. Yeah. So I'll just say that exists, and I have no information to share on what we might do with it or what direction we might go for anything in any medium, books, games, whatever, as you mentioned. No information to to share on this, unfortunately. But I know people are very much interested and dying to know, so yeah. So stay tuned. I think we will definitely share that when the time is when there's something to share. Yeah.
Awesome. So those are like all the big meaty questions I had. Was there anything like that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover? Any topics that you really wanted to maybe explore?
Oh, one thing that I wanted to talk about was the the collaborative nature with the rest of the team. What was really cool is you get a lot of ideas circulating, and ideas feed ideas, and they go in different directions. Sometimes the narrative was inspired by art direction, what the art team came up with. Our art director, Nicolas, he's fantastic, and he just comes up with these like amazing visuals and concept art. And for the axons, for instance, originally they were just behemoths, that you would have to fight. Then Nicolas made these amazing axon concept art. Ideas popped into my head about like, oh, well, this person has a story like this, that one has a story like that. And then I was like, oh, and then we can weave this into representations of the Dassault family, because that was something that I was struggling with, was how can we inject more information about the Dassault family before the reveal, so that later on it doesn't feel like they came out of nowhere, right? There's if you go back, you'll see that each of the axons, represents one of them. So I was like, oh, so that really all originated from Nico's sketches, because his concept art was so good. Similarly, when the environmental team like puts together some of the environments, and they're just so beautiful, and they just make you feel certain emotions and certain moods and certain things, and it indirectly influences how we approach a particular level, how we approach some of the dialogue there. And like Justro Village, for instance, is just like amazing, wonderful like environment. And I think Victor wrote some amazing like Justro dialogue there, and just like seeing that, like the reality of it, it's the playfulness of it, then you get really into that vibe, and it really helps you be in that. Of course, like music, like I think music and story influenced each other a lot. And I know, for instance, for Guillaume, he really likes listening to Lorient's music while he's writing his parts, and
Oh yeah,
so
I was gonna ask
like,
about that, like how much of the score was done while you were like actually still writing the
ah,
script.
it was all in parallel, everything,
Ah, that's
because
so cool. Yeah.
Lorient and I joined around the same time. I think we were some of the earliest folks to join. I mean, there was no Sandfall at that time. It was just Guillaume and Tom in their bedrooms working like on the side. And then later on, I think Loriane and I joined, then Nico joined. So yeah, like from the very beginning, I think art direction, music, and narrative have been jointly working together the whole time in parallel. And I think that is part of the reason why the story is so well integrated into the gameplay, particularly with Guillaume there, just like being the mastermind behind everything, and just like seeing all the different pieces and pulling them all together in a very cohesive, compelling way. But yeah, so like lots of the different teams, but also like when I think about like the cinematics team and the ideas that they have in terms of how to present certain shots and certain ways to tell the story through the cinematics, which is really wonderful. Like the ways that they played with camera angles and things like that, it just adds more like dimension to things, even with like gameplay, game design, you know, and the skills that they have. And yeah, even if you look through like kind of the way they name the enemies or the way they name the skills, and it all kind of ties back in and it sort of influences each other. It's just really wonderful. And so I feel like I really want to highlight that aspect, because it is different from writing a book or short stories when it's really just sitting in by yourself, or me just sitting in a kitchen writing. And obviously there are other people involved, you know, with book publishing, with, you know, editors and publishers, etc. But what's really cool about game development, I think, is working with such a creative team and seeing how all the different pieces like elevate each other and how they can all just create this immersive experience.
Yeah, I definitely noticed some of that too, like in like some of the character skill names. Like I think later on, like Maelle gets like, I think it's called like Gustave's
Mm,
homage or something, and it's like his I forget what it's called. It's his like overcharge kind of attack, kind of looks
yeah,
like. And I think one of
yeah,
Verso's attacks is called From Fire, and you could probably read into that what that might
yes,
signify.
yeah.
Very, very cool
Why
stuff.
like there's certain elemental damage is structured in a particular way, and why fire burn is perhaps yeah, used quite often.
Yes. What was your favorite book that you read for school?
Oh, for school. Good question. School was a long time ago for me, I gotta say. Several decades ago. But I'd say, so Flowers for Algernon, that I
Oh
read in
yeah, I
school.
read that
I
for
think
school
that
too,
was,
actually.
yeah. I think East of Eden, and I think, yeah, um, a lot of, we had lot of short stories that we read as well. Gift of the Magi, things like that.
Oh yeah, Henry, love that.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, but I'd say Flowers for Algernon probably stuck with me the most in terms of emotional impact at that age. Yeah.
nice. What would you say is your favorite book cover design?
Oh, that's such a good question. Oh, I don't have a good answer for you because I think I will admit lately I just read ebooks now, and
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't see the covers anymore. I will say, oh, okay. Not quite a traditional book, but one of my favorite artists is an artist named Yuko Shimizu, and she did the cover of a Godzilla like anthology or something like that. Go check it out. She's on Instagram. Her
Nice.
Godzilla cover is amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. So, do you have a favorite painter?
Favorite painter? No, I can't say I have a favorite painter. I remember, I would say illustrator though. Yuko Shimizu is my one of my favorite illustrators.
Nice.
Obviously, also Nicolas, our art director, is also one of my favorites. But painter, I think, is tricky because there's so many different styles.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the Dutch masters, you know, and also Caravaggio. So Clair
Oh yeah.
Obscur came from chiaroscuro because I learned a
Nice.
lot
Yeah.
about that in school. And then it's
Yeah.
funny, the name actually came up because we were brainstorming names. I think we had like hundreds of options that we came up with, and we're just like, ah. And Guillaume and I both separately came up with the idea of Clair Obscur. I offered chiaroscuro, he offered Clair Obscur, and then we realized
Ah,
it's the same concept but just in
yeah,
different languages, Italian and French. We're like,
nice.
okay, and then we're like, will this be too like hard for people to understand? One person was just like, who's Claire and why is she obscure? And we're like, oh no, will people get this? And we were like, you know what, they'll figure it out. Let's go with this. Yeah, and that was because one of the very influential classes for me growing up in high school was a humanities course where we studied a lot of the interconnection between art, paintings, music, architecture, and the politics and the society and world events of those times, how they all tie in together. So that was a very, and sculpture and all of these different art forms. So yeah, that was a very indirectly influenced Clair
Yeah,
Obscur as the title.
totally. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about like art history, I guess. And it's not just like visual arts, even if it's like authors from certain time periods.
Yeah,
It's such a cool window into like what was like the headspace, what were people
yeah.
talking about and feeling at those times. I always think it's like very fascinating.
It's fascinating as well when you look at them as individuals and then look at them as collectives, and you start to see different themes and then
Yeah.
counter themes to those, and then you see the pendulum swing across time. It's like, it's cool because we're all individuals and we're all unique, but we exist within the context of our times and the things that we've seen before. And so it's very fascinating to see that.
Did you have a favorite expedition besides Expedition 33 in the game?
I have a few actually. I think Julie's expedition, which I don't think we did not fully go into all the details about what happened in that expedition. There's quite a lot that was left unsaid in the game, but that's one of my favorites. I also really love. There's one expedition where they tried to eat a Nevron when they ran out of food. They had really bad food poisoning, and they died, but not actually because the Nevron, but because they drank the mushroom broth that one of the expeditioners made, who was just like, this is such a stupid idea. I'll make some mushroom broth for them to help them. And that's actually what killed them, which then ties into another expedition earlier that died because Esquier fed them mushrooms. So they have a little bit of mushroom connection there. I really enjoyed writing the expedition where there was a a rogue expedition that stole a bunch of airships, and they're all like, this is like all those like those old fuddy-duddies in Lumiere, like they don't know what they need to do for this, like I'm gonna take action on my own. And he's so that was actually quite fun to write. There was a expedition, I think 41, which was the Wolf expedition, and Wolf stands for we only live till 40, and that's also sort of like their mentality and also how they like so they are the wolves, which that was also fun to kind of sneak that in. That was cool.
Nice. Very cool. I like the one where I forget what number it was, but I think like they basically like made a bridge out of their bodies. That was
Yes.
pretty crazy.
Yeah. For those who come after.
Yes. Great theme. All right, Jennifer, those are all the questions I had. Again, thank you so much. This was really, really fun.
Thank you. This was really fun as well. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to speak with you.
Oh, thank you. And good luck for you and the rest of the team. I know we're approaching award season, so I expect you guys will be a little bit busy during that time. So best of luck with all that.